In case you're in doubt, my name is still Dino, and you are listening to a film with a reference podcast. Welcome to Film Magistery. In the second episode, this one, I would like to touch upon a subject that is personal to me, but probably to most other people too. By the way, it was personal in the first episode of this podcast as well, when I talked about Alain Resnais's Night and Fog, Holocaust and genocide. Human suffering should be personal to every human being on the planet. This time, I will talk about the film called El Sur, or The South, directed by the great Spanish director Victor Erice. The film's reference and the theme of this episode is our childhood's memories of our fathers. But before we start, I would like to share with you my recent film acquisitions in the late of October 2016. I usually don't buy DVDs anymore because, internet, streaming services, Netflix and such. But I just had to get these 6 films, all in one day, but in 2 different stores. So what did I get, you might ask? Well, of course, there was my best friend Tarkovsky's monumental science fiction film called Solaris from 1972, based on Stanislav Lem's astonishing novel with the same name. Tarkovsky's film vision is very, very unique, and I could watch his motion pictures any time of the day. I've also got Kubrick's Killer's Kiss from 1955, one of his first full-length films, so I'm excited to check that one out too. I'm also looking forward to watch Miloš Forman's Loves of a Blonde, or in Czech, Lásky jedné pravdou lásky from 1965, Schatzberg's The Panic in Needle Park from 1971 with Al Pacino and Kitty Wynn, and Ramsey's Morven Color from 2002. I'm also looking forward to rewatching In Bruges from 2008. All these 6 DVDs cost me less than a bottle of MacLeod when on sale. I gave only 40 Danish kroner, or mere $6. I'm certain I will get a lot of fun watching and rewatching these works. So that was a little side note. Now let's talk about this wonderful Spanish film called El Sur, or The South. It was directed by, in my opinion, the underappreciated Victor Erice, a Spanish director who only made a handful of films. He made The Spirit of the Beehive in 1973, The South in 1983, and in 2016 we are awaiting his correspondence with the late Abbas Kiarostami. As you can see, he is not Woody Allen, since he made less than a handful of films. It is interesting how Erice considered The South an unfinished film, because the producer Elias Cuerejeta stopped the filming at some point due to lack of financing. Erice fought for decades to get the money in order to finish his work, but unfortunately without luck. I say unfortunately for him, but for us, cinephiles, The South is a quite accomplished and well-made film, which works excellently, even though it is not entirely what Erice had initially in mind. Nevertheless, The South does feel as a finished work to me. Trust me when I say this, there are thousands of films that were actually finished, yet they shouldn't be, not even published. What I especially adore in this film is the natural lighting and Erice's dark interiors, which remind me a great deal of my favorite painter, the great Michelangelo Merisi da Caravaggio, who is famous for the dramatic use of lighting. If you take a look on his painting The Calling of the Saint Matthew, or Vocazione di San Matteo from 1600, you will see the resemblance in Erice's use of darkness and Caravaggio's dynamic use of light. Another obvious example could be The Entombment of Christ from around 1603, or many other works of Caravaggio for that sake. So if you haven't seen this beautiful film, I think you should stop listening to me right now. Go and watch it and then come back. However, here comes a very brief summary of the film. The South is a poetic portrait of a young girl who is haunted by her memory of her father and his unknown past. As she transforms from a child into a young woman, she realizes how her thoughts about her father gradually change as she looks back and recollects her memories from her childhood. The film is full of latent agony and pain, which can be felt in the female narrator's voice. The film travels back in time several times, showing us a younger Estrella spending her time with her parents, predominantly with her father. Now, I would like to talk about a few scenes in the film. In the beginning of The South, we see 15-year-old Estrella in her bed, while her mother yells her father's name, Agustin. But the camera is constantly showing us Estrella's face, while in the background we learn that Estrella's father is missing. She slowly gets up and fetches a little black box and fervently holds it in her hands. Suddenly rays of sunlight hit Estrella's room, while the non-diegetic music plays in the background. She slowly opens up the box and takes out her father's pendulum. She tells us that after the moment she knew that she will never see him again. This is a very important moment in the film, just as a scene that will appear near the end, and I will discuss it very soon. Every child has a certain relationship to their parents. Many children, at least those with what we would call a normal childhood, often glorify their fathers, and so did Estrella in Erice's work. The whole film is an examination of the relationship of a father and his daughter in Spain in the years after the devastating Spanish Civil War. Very quickly we learn that the father came to the northern Spain after the war, but Estrella doesn't know anything about his past nor the region he came from. We never get the specifics of Agustin's past or his involvement in the war, but one night Estrella's aunt tells the following story.
Antes de la guerra, tu abuelo era de los malos y tu padre de los buenos. Pero luego cuando ganó
Before the war, your grandpa was one of the bad guys, and your father one of the good guys. But then, when Franco won, your grandpa became a saint and your father a demon. You see how things are in this world? Just words, and only words. Thus, Estrella treats the southern Spain as a magical or even a mythical sort of Neverland. In one scene we see 8-year-old Estrella looking at some old postcards from Sevilla. At the same time, we hear older Estrella narrate the following.
Allí, algo que yo no lograba aclarar, había sucedido a mi padre una vez. Algo que le hizo partir para no volver más.
Something I never understood clearly happened to my father there. Something that made him leave and never go back. The South consists of several segments that could be characterized as film vignettes, almost independent from each other, but not entirely disconnected. They are always subtle scene transitions, from Estrella in the bed holding the pendulum to her parents in the very same bed when her mother was pregnant with her, while her father holds the same pendulum in his hand. In another scene we see 8-year-old Estrella ride a bike down an alley. In the following we see 15-year-old Estrella riding the bike towards the camera. With these connections, Erice establishes a strong relationship between the present and the past, between a daughter and her father. Near the end, Estrella, the narrator, asks herself if she could have done anything for her father. We see him sitting in a restaurant while Estrella tells us that moment was the last time she spoke to him. Why that is revealed in the next sequence, which shall not be exposed here. Later, Estrella is packing her suitcase because she's going to the southern Spain, to her father's family, where she wants to relax after her illness. In her suitcase she puts the father's old postcards and his black box with the pendulum. She opens it for a second and closes it and puts it in the suitcase. It is as if she's aware that the secret it holds will be uncovered, and the childhood's magic is soon to be demystified and gone. Nevertheless, she hopes that at last she will see and experience the father's magical land, the South, El Sur. At the same moment, the magic from her childhood will be gone, but it will be a necessary step forward in her own experience and the process of understanding of her existence. Now the reference to the film is our childhood's memories of our fathers. When I was a kid, my father was very important to me. He has been a person who I always looked up to. He was a great football player, so I really enjoyed when we played together near our apartment. I also thought of him as a wise man, because he always had something clever to say about anything. But he was not a big talker, and he only spoke when he found it necessary. I don't come from a patriarchal family. I grew up in the socialist Yugoslavia in the 1980s. Both of my parents worked hard to provide for me and my younger brother Elvis. My mother got a job as soon as she finished her education, just as my father. He never laid a hand on me, meaning he never beat me nor my brother. But nevertheless, I always had an utmost respect for my father. He too was a mystical person to me when I was a kid, just as Estrella's father, Agustin, to her. However, my father did not come from another part of the country as Estrella's father did. It is probably a case for psychologists, but I still consider him a somewhat mystical person, my father that is, mostly because he's not a very open and outspoken guy. He's not a kind of a man who likes to chit-chat or talk about himself, and the lack of his openness is probably a big contributor to his mystical appearance. But being a member of the Communist Party in Yugoslavia before the war in the 1990s, my father was always a firm realist who never paid attention to the nature of metaphysics, religion, or the realm of magic, as we get the insinuation of Estrella and her father in the film. Of course, when we are children, we consider our parents to be at least some sort of demigods, but that picture gets gradually more realistic as life slowly takes all of the magic out of our existence, as soon as we reach adolescence. But it is interesting how our thoughts of our parents keep at least the notion of the magical aspect. Maybe that never fades away, since we always are aware that they are our creators and that they are visible and present in our lives as long as they live. And when we lose them, they are still around us because we have visible evidence of their previous presence, but also because we chose to have them around for the reason to preserve our memories of them. And then after their death, the magical and mystical part about our parents probably gets stronger once again. The magical aura around our fathers, our parents, never fades away. If we preserve their legacy and our memory of how they were, in some way, that's how mythology arises and becomes alive. And I think that is also the case with Estrella and her memory of her father, even when she eventually gets to the south and reveals some of her father's secrets and mysteries. She will always consider her father to be a mysterious figure, even after she gets to know more about him and his past. Of course, it will never be the same as in her childhood. The idea about our fathers can change, just as Estrella tells us at some point in the film, but the magic will probably always be there to some extent. And this concludes the second episode of Film Magistery. If you like listening to this little project of mine, you can subscribe to the podcast. Follow us on Facebook and YouTube. If you choose to do so, then, Louis, I think this is the beginning of a beautiful friendship. Until next time, good luck and good night, my friend.